Incoming President Emmerson Mnangagwa has arrived at the National Sports Stadium to the cheers of tens of thousands of Zimbabweans ahead of his swearing-in. Opposition leaders and diplomats are in attendance as the country prepares to hear the first address of Mr. Mnangagwa, who replaced Robert Mugabe after his resignation on Tuesday amid impeachment proceedings. The former Justice and Defence Minister, who was fired earlier this month as Vice President, will become the country's second leader since independence from white minority rule in 1980. Mr. Mnangagwa, who is also known as the Crocodile, was a key Mugabe confidant for decades until they fell out because of the presidential ambitions of Mr. Mugabe's wife, Grace. The ruling ZANU-PF party nominated Mr. Mnangagwa to fill the vacancy left by Mr. Mugabe on Wednesday, after he returned from exile. Some people began to dance in the stadium stands ahead of the inauguration, while some banners read "Dawn of a New Era" and "No to Retribution," even as human rights activists began to report worrying details of attacks on allies of the former First Lady and their families. Tide Eliseo held a small Zimbabwean flag as she sold drinks from a cooler outside the stadium. She said she would welcome a fresh start, saying life now is impossible. As the inauguration crowd streamed by, Sharon Samurawo sat on a ledge, watching. She said she hoped Mr. Mnangagwa would learn from the errors of his predecessor, though she acknowledged the path ahead for Zimbabwe is unknown. Still, after 37 years, we've got someone different. Despite his long association with the government, Mr. Mnangagwa has promised democracy. In the end, Mr. Mugabe was isolated and showing few of the political skills that kept him in power for 37 years. Ruling party officials said Mr. Mnangagwa will remain in Zimbabwe with their promise that he is safe and his legacy as a hero will stand after his fight for an independent Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe's state-run Herald newspaper reported Mr. Mnangagwa has assured Mr. Mugabe and his family of their maximum security as they remain in the country. The report confirmed Mr. Mugabe would not attend the ceremony because he needed time to rest. Speaking ahead of the inauguration, Zimbabwe's Minister for National Healing, Reconciliation and Integration Sakai Holland said today marked a new beginning. What has happened in the past, there are mechanisms in place that we have built, an infrastructure for peace, where we are going to systematically root out behaviors that we never want to see again in the future in the new Zimbabwe, she told the ABC's PM program. Ms. Holland said even though she was tortured under the Mugabe regime, she does not begrudge the former leader being given immunity from prosecution. Mugabe has been held to account, she said. Can you see what has happened to him in the last few weeks? He did not stand aside, they kicked him out. Elsewhere in the capital, long lines formed outside banks, a common sight in a nation struggling with cash shortages and other severe economic problems that the new president will have to confront. Right now, nothing has really changed for me.